you, Danny.
Okay, good relative, like everything.
Yes. Oh, totally.
No, let's see. Is that okay, Catherine? That everything can be like my whole week can be just into good. Well, okay, I'm managing it. Or let's say I have my whole week experience here. And you say, how you doing? And I say, well, it seems okay. It seems good. So, but you actually see it. You're coming from a place that's looking at somehow the creative aspects of the week that you've lived. And you're seeing how it, and you say, okay, good. I'm managing this, or sleep, or this money. Or you see an actual participation in your own life, and that you're managing what seems normal. But as you look at it from another perspective, you see the remarkableness that seems of our normalcy. And you see in the normalcy this nuanced thing where the skin responds to temperature, where the brain responds to feedback, where you respond to a call from your daughter. You're living a million existences in one moment. All of them brilliantly conceived, and yet somehow as normalcy. Unless something is lost, or even my memory, if something happens and I can't remember a minute ago or 30 seconds ago or something, and the thread, as I just read something, where the thread is lost then of the narrative.
Catherine can't hear, just so you know.
Catherine can't hear.
She's having trouble getting her sound on.
Okay, Catherine, you just missed out on. That would have been very important for your next book.
I don't know. She can't hear us, so.
At all, can't hear it. There's no way.
No, she just left a chat that said, I can't hear anyone.
Okay, does she speak? Catherine. Catherine, how are you?
All right.
You can hear now?
I can. Can you?
Okay, I thought I was brilliantly conversing with you with hand talk. So you can hear now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We seem to have.
That was weird because I did an interview yesterday and everything was fine. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Well, the thing that we had sort of kidded around about is that, in fact, if we can just capture the week like this, simply, and then juggle and then look at the week. When we were saying originally to Urja, how are you? She's good. And I say, okay, good just described this week.
Yes.
And yet this week had so many nuances and ups and downs and this and that and Netflix shows and
amazing. Yeah.
Conversations with children, this and that, and yet good. So let's say I re-examine good. My own statement, it was okay, good. It was this week. And I look at it and I shuffle it. And I look at good.
Yeah.
And then I can also look at a tough week. And I look at tough. And somehow I'm getting perspective on something, not to correct it or to do this or to do that. But there's a kind of dimension that doesn't belong to me literally that's happening. And it's not related to the social security number or anything like that.
Yeah.
Identity. But that when I shake it up and look at it, it's not so covered by the identity movement of survival, but okay, so then I look at good. And if I look at good, I see I couldn't sleep or my neck hurt so bad, or I felt so happy to get this call. And I see a pastiche, a mélange, a soup of sorts of experience. But somehow you have the experience from a different perspective. And it doesn't seem to have that much of the literalness of survival, because what it gets a look at, in order to perceive that level, it humanizes the story. And in the human story, the perspective of making a buck, survival in that way, where it's driven, literally, is not the driving factor of existence. You see, a driving factor of existence is exploration of its own life that it took for granted in some way. And that exploration was a holy thing that couldn't just be done by ego or capture. They can do versions of it. But something happened to you that allowed your entree into seeing a perspective where you are not the factor in the story. You are you as a expression, but not literally the possessive. And the access to the story from the perspective of the mirror looking into the story meant that there was something sacred happen, and sacred wasn't so woo-woo, as meant that when you went back into the story after the perception, you brought a different you into the situation. If you saw something that was hidden in plain sight, even about your parents, you will say as a kid or something, somehow you went back into the story from a different perspective. And in that perspective, there was I think, a grace that allowed you a creative expression in it. When the creative expression becomes your life, while you still have a literal life going on privately, you then have a creative life going on outwardly. That would be your measure. Let's say I meet the Buddha's girlfriend. Okay. Did you know that Catherine is the Buddha's girlfriend? And that the Buddha lives in New Jersey and that they've been very tight for a long time? So you can't do that. You can't do a Mormon-esque situation where the materialization of Buddha. So then the Buddha that you can say like that to is a Buddha that is not literally a Buddha, but is magical thinking Buddha. Okay. Let me see. So you have explored another dimension where, coming from a state of mind yourself, you can bring a quality into a story that's mystical or that's mysterious. So that you then can have a girlfriend relationship to Buddha. Let me see. Would I like to have a girlfriend relationship to Buddha? Yeah. Yeah, sure. You say, you meet Dalai Lama, say, no, not Dalai Lama, Buddha. We want the authentic dude who was there and had the experience, not the isms and all of that, the variants, but we want to have somehow an intimacy, the intimacy of schmaltzy that it literalizes, but somehow it's as if you were there in the moments of discovery, as if you were there and you took away the history and the mystery and the shtick around it, and you had the experience there. But you also understood that something had to happen to you for that experience to take place. And that somehow it was naive to the literal world. That something in its life then started to have an exploration of the parallel life, not so much the continuity of the self, but the exploration of the life, where the self was a medium of exploration. I've described it in the past as the taxi driver or the Uber driver of the exploration. You become aware that there's other forces at play in your life, and that the self is the instrument of carrying it out, but not the originator, that there are other. And as you become aware of that, experiences that happen to you in your everyday life, that can be very small, the loss of a job, the loss of this, the interruption of the continuity sends one to a place that usually there will be confusion. Confusion not being a flaw from the creative life. Confusion is, in fact, what is actually happening when one has sort of a creative life happening and is a literal measure of them. So in attempting to be the literal character that is defined by the social structure as to who they are, when there's a creative thread running through their life, is confusion that's overcome by training or whatever, but the underpinnings of the confusion was that there is a fusion happening, that generally when one is imprisoned in a literalness, we'll say it can be from slavery to an improper marriage, or a marriage that's gone sour, or to a job that's terrible, or whatever the circumstance for you, but you need to do it and you need to stay in it. And somehow the need to stay in it is a survival instrument defining the future. And so advisors are saying, no, you don't need to do it. It's obviously right there, but only will come to you through discovery. And discovery this will be, and they say, you see, there is an avoidance of discovery inherently in the story. That's why it comes accidentally. So everyone in the neighborhood knew that your marriage was explosive and in flux and this and that. Okay. And everyone, and then so it played out. And so one could say, hey, what are you guys doing? Why don't you have an honest conversation here? Can't you see that it doesn't work this way or that way? And work doesn't only mean surviving. Work means that it's a kind of true feeling. And you say, no, the true feeling is sublimated towards the continuity. But you also say, if the true feeling is sublimated towards the continuity, there will be an inner life that feels very shallow. Because survival as the main force in one's life is a very shallow expression. It feels the peripheral, or it looks like it to be peripheral or accidental, when in fact there's a whole universe of exploration. That when in fact you focus on the identity being this self, there's a fear of a peripheral life, of seeing the other dimensions. So it's only in retrospect, when it's kind of lost, that you see the other parallel dimensions were there all along. Having access to that is a privilege.
Yeah.
Because the moment that it's perceived or discovered, it seems to transform the circumstance where continuity is no longer the factor. It may be something that is so revealed in a marriage that it's instantly shifted. You see it's missing a heartfelt conversation. You see then that there are moments that reveal the absence of a heartfelt conversation towards the continuity. But then when the continuity means the squashing of the feelings towards the survival, common sense. It's not common sense to the body, to the brain, to the being, to have its creative juices repressed in order to survive in the literal sense. So there's always a moment of explosion waiting when it must express itself and free itself from the energy. And I say, why? And because there is a truth that runs through the affair and the relationship that allowed it to come together and create. But it is not, it laughs at you when it has to literalize into continuity or survival. So then I see, holy shit, as discovery. There's a whole parallel existence that's hidden in plain sight that we live around and we navigate through. It looks like thought, it looks like common sense, it looks like that, but it seems to escape our grasp as to the who am I question that runs through the literal story. And yet it can't be captured, but it has a relationship to something true in some sense. And the truth is not laid out as the Constitution or this or that, but the truth is laid out more of in a creative perspective, that when you're in a creative perspective, you have a relationship to some truth that's not laid out. And in any creative zone, there is always a concern somewhere inwardly of selling out to the literal. But you see inherently in the creative perspective, the palette of expression available to you. And but you also see when you are introduced to the depth of it, that depth of it is now in your eyesight. So it's second nature to you now. So who jumped out of the chair about being girlfriend to Buddha? I think that Urja. I thought your leg was hurting because you jumped out of the chair when you thought, me, I'll give it a try.
That's what
You
we
think
all
so?
want. Buddha, Jesus, Shiva.
So you think you would have done like Veronica with Jesus when he fell down there and to wipe his face with your shawl? Hmm? What do you think? You would have been concerned that, well, you do that, don't you? You do wipe the face of Jesus every now and then when you take a walk around Boulder, Colorado, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jesus.
not literally.
Because you can't talk Jesus out of his fate. So he wouldn't let you disturb him, but you could say, straighten up your posture a little bit. Here, take a drink of water. So you could have helped him on to his road to his experience. So no one who entertained him during those so-called 14 steps. I was just looking today, we had the drawings here. And each occasion that happened on every step, who he met, who came there, what happened, who hurt him, who loved him, who cared for him. You know. And so each one of these, there are churches that are built around that experience of that, the 14 steps of Jesus to the crucifixion have lessons in it, supposedly. But there are people who don't have a literal religion, but they see a religious message in the story that's very real to them, that's the thread that runs through life. But they don't organize it into and they say, why? I say, because in the 14 steps, Jesus didn't know what was going to happen in the next step and the next step and the next step. When someone hugged him and someone smacked him and someone did this and that, but somehow that he went into each experience without there being a pre-knowledge of it.
Yeah.
So pre-knowledge as rules is a bit shaky when it's in fact the creative zone first. You can have the feeling, then you can see that the rules are more instructions than they are. As you go into it deeply, the exploration of it, you start to see what was literal rules were more flexible, that they had other dimensions in them. And that it captured your imagination or what you looked like your imagination, but in fact, it freed an expression that was called imagination. You saw the imagined Jesus was to, in actuality, the real Jesus, the imagined Jesus. The literalization of it took away any magic that ran through it and just people acting like creeps to each other. But in the metaphor of spirituality, you saw like a stranger in a strange land, one who would come back with an innocence inherent would be punished, would be tormented, would be cheered and kicked. And to have the experience, and they say it's as if, okay, God's child says, let's see what the hell's going on down there. And I say the worst advice would be, let's go to Jerusalem and Nazareth and see what's going on. And they say, no, don't go to Brooklyn or California or something like that. Where would you have sent your Jesus, Catherine?
Well, I'm not looking for him, so I don't know.
Well, let's say you had the book to write and you had the origin story. And so you don't think you would choose Nazareth?
Yeah, Bethlehem, why not?
Well, there's a lot is going on there.
City of David.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Is it City of David?
Bethlehem, yes.
David. Yeah. Mhm. What do you think? What do you think, Spiro? Where would your Jesus come from?
From the sky.
From the sky, but not land literally.
That's
Then,
the case.
but he would have to, in order to understand what was happening to the human race, wouldn't they have them to gravity and be subject to it? So then that's God is subject to human law, and you see that human law had a predisposition of power and suppression. Then all of a sudden, God is born, and is not freedom of expression, but suppression. So let's say God can't do suppression well. He's a screw up. When God takes a shape, it screws up. It can't be, okay, you have to kill this one, you have to do that one, you have to bite that, whatever. So let's say this God taking a shape is a schmuck in the literal world, which has survival and caste systems and systems. And this schmuck took a picture. Just let me experience what it is to be a human being. And to experience what a human being is to have the shit kicked out of you for a long time because you are a human being and you're seeing things from a human perspective. So let's say, okay, I can understand the 14 steps, those drawings that you have over there, how heavy they are. And I could understand that one came in for the experience. Now that's the premise of the biblical thought, isn't it? That God came in at times to have the experience of what it meant. And in fact, there were entire cultures that were built on supposed memories of these conversations with God. What do you think? Is there a strong, Catherine, in that world for you? How's your relationship to religion? Do you have a literal
Well,
one?
I left organized religion when I was 18. So,
You left it.
yeah, when I
By
was
doing
18.
like that? By going like that?
No,
Or-
I was, my first year at university, I studied theology. I was going to be a missionary. I was very religious, but I read too much and thought too much. And by the end of the year, I was an agnostic. So did you happen to see the history of Jerusalem on CNN?
I think I saw parts of it there. I may have taped it.
There were 6 episodes, I think, 2,000, 3,000 euro history. And it's all about people killing each other in the name of religion.
I have that tape there. And
Yeah, it's worth seeing,
I-
I think.
I saw the four, let me see, they were killing each other still. I think they stopped for a moment to have a meal.
Yeah, and they're still doing it. I mean,
So, okay, so let's say, and they
It's
also have
absurd.
rules. They have rules to do it. The only thing is if you happen to be in the neighborhood while those rules are applying, and you're walking by with your hands in your pocket as a schmo, just a person, a human with no literal attachment like that, that you know, and you meet attachment that can claim a history and a mystery and a shtick, but you also see what it's missing is a soul or a heart, that the literalization of identity chooses the weirdest dimensions for itself. Okay. Where
I think the poison is that you think if you don't agree with my religion, then you're wrong. You'll go to hell or I'll kill you. To make
yeah, what was the religion again?
yeah.
Well, you put the lime in the coconut, you shake it all up. And I said, okay.
Well, except for Buddhism, they're pretty much
okay,
all
so
like
Buddhism. So there's a guy on the side of the road and he says, look, my man. I said, Buddha, what happened to you? He says, well, I lost my girlfriend, lost my kids. Gave up being a prince. I did sadhu. I felt like a schmuck as a sadhu. The failure of everything had me sitting here and said, holy shit. a doorway opened up that was not possible while I was a father and I was a then and a son and a prince and even a sadhu. But somehow the surrender of everything, and it had to be truly surrendered, that meant a broken heart, where you saw that everything you did was full of shit. And that's not the world's version of full of shit, but you see from your perspective the bullshit. And that bullshit is a key doorway of perception where time is not the literal factor of who you are by age or circumstance. So my feeling is that depending on the level of perception of that alternative or parallel world, you then have relationships that are based on the parallel experience more. And there is a truth in it. So breaking up in that situation, which is not literalized, but is based on a feeling, if there is a loss in it, okay, then we were discussing it before. If it in fact is a betrayal of the energy in some way where you lose contact with the feeling, and that's normal in relationships that break up when there's a feeling that unites it, and then when it breaks up, it can be so awful to each other and then break up, and that's the literal situation. But when that happens in the creative situation, where the hurt is deep, and so there is also, but there's a release of the story. And in the release of the story, it shows you another dimension. Now, an action that does violence in that story, okay, you would see then that because life goes on, so there's a re-meeting waiting. Creatively, if it happens for me where there is a break in such a way, or it's only because I lose contact with the energy in the relationship. It's no longer around then the relationship and the relationship to this person is around more survival, but it's not around exploration because I lose contact. It's in relationship. There's another dimension that I may hang for. I may even create a body that'll hang for that experience, but there's another dimension of our relationship yet to manifest. But it's no longer part of the continuity. It's kind of meeting from a hey baby, actually, just like will happen here often when there may be what looks like a literal crisis, but it's also a crisis because of the undercurrent that it may need, hey, you guys still into this? Because a kind of creative freedom is essential to the expression. It's not a job, it's your expression. So, baboom. So there are times then when the feeling that allowed some expression to take place is interrupted. And I say, what's the interruption? You read something and you discover your husband's not your husband, or your wife is not your wife, or so. And it's not that it's not literally that, but something you read shifts the plane. And the feeling shifts. And then it starts to manifest in its own way. But what happens, I think, is that when there's discovery changes the continuity. Survival may be the sense that continues. But I feel the being is looking elsewhere, creatively. Wishful thinking, Catherine. So well, let's see, you're able to come back just for poet laureate, rapper, this whole experience may be waiting. It depends if they're going to say, Grandma, come on into the story with a straight face. But what do you say? It should be pretty exciting. Or you're not seeing it that far.
Well, right now I'm very concerned. He's having very bad depression, my teenager grandson. Yeah. He carries the world on his shoulders. His rap poems are never about him. It's always about what's going on in the world now.
But you see the thread that runs through it.
Yeah, but I wish he could come through it and out. He's I'm concerned because teenage depression can be dangerous. you
I
know.
understand, but could you have convinced his grandpa to be cool, lighten up a little bit? Or
His
convince his
grandfather, my husband, you mean,
his grandpa, his idol.
his
So you
father,
say,
I don't know.
you say to any one of that side of the family, will you guys lighten up a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
And you see that they were intense.
Mhm.
And if you try, you say, look, can't we just come from a lightened up space and then we'll explore what's happening here? And you say, lots of luck. You'll have to write 100 books to get that moment. But you may also go on tour because there is something a bit different. I think with grandchildren, even though they may be caught up in the karmic content, for them it's authenticity. It's not craziness or anything like that. It's authenticity of experience. And so you you understand that you've seen enough creative expressions where the person was going overboard, then you kind of had a creative framework because you saw that. So somehow he's coming from his life from a creative perspective, not a literal one. So much. And so it'll be a challenging one from you because you can't, they have to have freedom to find out or locate something. Your presence has meaning, I would say. I'm just going into my little crystal ball here. Your presence has meaning in memory.
Mm.
And that may have also been there in your love affair in the beginning, that somehow the memory of you saved it from being. So it's weird. I'm just imagining being related to you that way while he's in that situation. And of course, your concern will be that the person's so intense in what they're doing that it's hard to communicate, or it's not, you know.
Not only hard, he doesn't talk to anyone. He won't talk on the phone. It's
So somehow
he
you have
can't
to,
go to school, it's
well, we almost
serious.
had him for, yeah, but we almost had him here for a minute there when there were other kids on where they would say, hey, mother, jump a comment, stop the shit. We're all doing the same thing. We had 5 rappers on at the same moment secretly. So we could have all jumped into the picture and called them out. And then you wouldn't be grandma in the same way any longer. You would be a cool, hip grandma, which you are now in some way.
Well, anyway,
So let's say you're in the middle of a happening and you're being sometimes really concerned is not a fault. It happens to be a real reading of the situation where it can go. But you also see it's kind of experiential. It's determined to have its experiences. You know? And you've seen that before creatively, haven't you? Where it's, you can advise it, you can care for it, but the determination to have the experience is part of its process. Right?
I don't think he's able to have the experience. His parents have put him on Prozac. And he's just like deadened, Anyway, sorry.
No. Look, I'm saying,
It's serious, though.
if I'm looking from the perspective, if I'm you, all of a sudden, as me, and I'm looking at the situation, and I say, what's going to make me deeply, deeply fucking cry? Because I'd like this kid to be so healthy and so cool, and I'm trying there, and all the elements. Okay, so let's say if I'm you, then I would be in the neighborhood of a kind of broken heart without too much stick around it, because I'm trying to navigate around all the issues that people have, which would simply seem like a normal, fucking simple, heartfelt conversation, is the most complex thing that has to slip in through the side door, around the corner. Okay, you understand? So it's brilliantly conceived. And I feel that all your experiences are genuine. And it's a small 15-minute conversation, but it comes from a pure space, talking to oneself. And so I feel in the most Meshuggah way, the relationship to the grandchild is a relationship to oneself, not as the literal time, but there's something pure in it that doesn't have a history. but the history around it defines it in some way. So they're trying to connect always. They're talking to outer space, the ahistorical relationship, where it's more based on mystery. So it's instant, it's a look, it's a feeling, it's a shared thing, it's a memory. It's kind of existing on so many other levels simultaneously. But the capacity to have that honest relationship when there's a history in a way, is an act. You're still into it? So far, you have been able to communicate where did seem to be a basic affection happening between you.
Yes.
Just basic
That's-
affection.
That's there.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah. And somehow it outwitted the form to some degree. You were share something. Hmm?
I just wish
It's
it
brilliant
either,
so far.
I wish he'd either talk or write his poems or something. He's just out of it, no. Anyway,
No, let me put myself in there. Could I would say at 14, it's difficult to talk to all.
He's 17 now.
Well, 17, it's not as difficult to talk, but grandma, okay. I say you're in a remarkably creative, weird situation, the world. And I say, why? Because the world, there's something pure in it. So I think that you will be in memory. It's not so much related to form, but there'll be moments of memory, of reflection. That you want the job. You're becoming a memory, a pure memory. And the memory is around the goodness of the healthiness. You need to be healthy some way to explore the dimensions of this existence. It needs a kind of creative healthiness. So I feel that you are in absence and presence, you're doing your thing. But in fact, it's going to send you at times where it sends me, where it's such a small that you could just crawl into the picture and say, hey, right. But you'll see that it's determined to do what it's going to do. But it's also kind of missing a creative or a momentary conversation from a hey baby perspective, where somehow your presence gives the person some understanding that their literal life is theater to some degree. And so when one enters into the theater of life, there's a subtle shift in direction where one is finding their voice, not that they have a given voice beforehand. So that is the capacity then to have the empathy to assume enough identities and creative expression. Where it's the empathy that you feel that you're expressing in your art. But then a life based on the empathy navigating, where you assume the, I think you've put that in motion with the boy. And I think that a lot of the circumstance around you is giving you enough, it's loosened up to some degree. It's lightened up to some degree that allowed you access.
Danny, if I've learned anything, it's you can't, no matter how much you care, you can't help anyone if they're not self-helping.
Yeah, but if you then see that it's not self-helping, but then you enter into the little story where help was not the question, the person has an integrity in their experience that they won't allow to be shifted. Now, how does that come from? Well, I remember in the military hospital that we were locked in a ward there, where the Christian ladies would come to play bingo once a week with these 200 maniac men who were locked up. And there was something in organized feeling that when you came into the place, but still these characters, many of them still was still criminal, was still it was all a military thing. These guys had done outrageous things in the military that was normal for them, but was really cheesy for a human experience. And so when you met these guys, you met a secret life that they had, that they were really hurt. So then they would send people to play bingo with them. A nice, really nice woman and be affectionate. And it was really remarkable to some degree that there would be an exchange that was human. At the same time that the circumstance was not. And why? Because these guys had experienced something that a human being is not supposed to experience, even if they're covered by the military and training and everything like that. There's an experience so vulgar that it gets past the training and it gets past the rawness, and you carry it. So they're making it as if it's a flaw in your being when it's an intelligence in your being, that it's seen something that was inhuman, and that you then believed in a system that allowed you to do something that is now in your memory and your reflection and you're looking at. And then you see a dimension. So then, and then you then relate to so-called life where there's a population that it hasn't seen it, it's only theory. And you adjust to that population, but you've also seen something that a human being is not supposed to see. And it's called PTSD, but you see that the body is recovering, the body is brilliant. It is not such a dumb thing that it's going through. It is attempting to find a way. They're trying to literally train it as a job of this or that. But what has happened is that the continuity is interrupted so profoundly that they're then trying to say, what will life be like after the virus? As if there's a similarity. What will life be like after you saw the most horrendous, and not only saw it, but participated in it? And then experience it in retrospect as it shifts the plane for you, where you have seen something that is hidden, and yet there's a punishment or a treatment or whatever. But what has happened is that you have revealed the underpinnings of a system. And once it's revealed, something has shifted or changed. So something that is brilliant seems like a flaw. But if I'm saying, how can I be a rapper and a poet in this day and age, in this circumstance, with what is happening in the world and in the country? And I think that they're just going to close the Mother Teresa school in India, aren't they? They're pulling the funding for it. Okay. So let's say I'm seeing all that. So what he's seeing is, in fact, it does seem to me that if he's related to you, that there's a push for authenticity in him. And since he has such a mixed identity in the circumstance, where it doesn't have a fixed story like that, I think is brilliant. And I think your presence has meaning in it. And there are moments you probably will have to step in literally, you know.
I wish I would get him here. I wish he would live here.
Yeah.
Get out, you know, it's.
No, this is reflective of something that we're all going through in our own way.
Yeah.
You know, where we have an aspect of ourselves in others living on. And you can't just yell into the story, hey, don't make a right turn or something like that. So it's not that, it's somehow you have to somehow see it or watch it or be there for it. But there is a difference when it's kind of agreed that you are there.
No, he knows that. And
Well, it seemed like you had that. When I looked at it, well, it was just like there was a bunch of other kids that they may all meet one day. I think I would have loved to have had done a shout out and meet, and they would have found down the block that there was this kid and that kid hanging out. So there must be 100 young people that I've seen through us here that are really brilliant in their own way.
yeah.
And
He was so happy just 3 weeks ago. Wisconsin flew him to the university to perform for the University of Wisconsin. and he loved it. Everything went well. He got to meet other rappers. They brought other rappers in. And so he'll go from that, and then he's just like a zombie, you know.
Oh, look, it'll start to happen by accident when he meets Kai's son.
How
Then
old,
they'll-
how old
then
is
they'll-
I was just gonna suggest maybe
No,
you
no,
should
no, you can't.
connect them, no?
We're not
How
letting the
old is-
grandma.
how old is he, Kai?
Hold it a moment. We're not letting the grandmommies and the mommies arrange it. It has to be accidental.
No, I just want to know how old her son is.
He's 14, but he hangs out with kids much older. He's pretty mature.
So let's say, and then also we have Eric's, boy, must be around 14 now too, or so. And he's 11, I'm sorry. So but he plays a few instruments. And
Well, 11 is our 14.
they just
today.
sent me a musical that they had him on there.
Yeah.
Eric's brother did, I still don't get what he was saying, but he was announcing his freedom wearing a suit and a t-shirt. And then the kids jumped in and started to sing also. So let's say there's a secret happening waiting in the wing. That happened just because he popped in for a moment and introduced himself. So now
I
he is
remember
also
that.
a comedian.
I want to show you a photo. I'll be right back.
Look how excited she is. Just attempting to get her a bit excited. What do you think? Where actually a person who makes the movies or writes the movies can't see the creativity happening in their own situation. They kind of normalize. Okay, so everyone now is thinking of our existence as being a normal situation that we're in. Yeah, so you think it's normal then to feel 40 years later to show a picture of a young boy who's your grandchild.
No,
Could you
this
ever
is a recent picture. I don't know if you see him.
Could you ever have imagined this moment?
Well,
You being this older woman back there.
no, but it's, you know, the 10 days he was with me, his parents said he was happier those 10 days in Ojai than the last 2 years. That's why I wish I get him here more.
No,
Not
let's
for
say when
me,
you
but
wish-
just to get out of where he is, you know.
No, when you wish, when you start to wish, you start to put emotions on. So your wishes are not just wishes of an old lady thinking, watching. So the wishes themselves are creative acts. That's why I'm always goofing with you about wishful thinking. I'm not talking about wishful thinking. I'm talking about wishful thinking creatively, where from what I see, what I looked at, the literalness of the situation, to me, it was all wishful thinking, because I remember a conversation not too long ago where your heart was broken because you couldn't have that contact, because the story between you and the literal kids was in such a way that you couldn't say, hey, baby. Well, you know, okay. So the hey, baby as innocence is missing, where it has no trip, the hey, baby. It comes from a different place, we're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that somehow I saw that in you, and that secretly, while you were going through your things, there was a hurt that ran through the story over something so simple and yet impossible. That guy was not going to let you get away with knowing his kids and this and that and being an influence. All the shtick that runs through the literal story when it's an evocative story.
Family drama.
So when there is a moment where it's an evocative story, and how does one reach that? It's usually when one loses it. Where I say,
Danny,
yeah.
how are your boys? How are they doing?
Well, Rafi was coming down here from Denver, but then his friend was sick. And it turned out to be COVID. And then he took some test or whatever, and I think he tested positive, even though it wasn't symptomatic. So he couldn't come down here. So he's just in that.
Raphael has COVID?
Raphael. Well, he tested one positive and one negative with these home tests. So he's just in home isolation.
Goodness.
Seth is a cool dude who somehow I'm finding out is really hip to the world of games.
Hip to the world of what?
Game playing.
Okay.
Which is a new world to us.
I
But
always
that-
thought Seth would end up an entrepreneur or something.
He may take up entrepreneur, but he's kind of anti-entrepreneurial in his mindset. So he would be more Bernie, probably in background or with politics or something like that. They see all the conspiracies in the story, but in games, I do see that there was a whole other world. And so in that whole other world, there's also
Virtual.
the virtual world, then is also a Bitcoin world and a cryptocurrency world. And so it is one of the major cryptocurrencies expressions where everything, what looks like an illusion to us old geezers. Okay. And they say, why? I say, because the game world is the reality that they're in. And you see that there's an immediate blockage for us old geezers that we would never learn deeply enough the computer to get into that world that they take for granted. So then I say, okay, how can I translate my painting into crypto, my literal painting? And I just asked that dopey question, and you go online and you see they've been doing it for years. It's part of the normalcy or whatever of the situation. And you see that then Seth is also exploring the crypto aspect of it.
Mhm.
And then I read some article in today's paper in the New York Times about how these billionaires are taking away a tax cut that belongs to the population, but they're running away with it. And there's one guy who was the radio announcer in Santa Cruz, all of a sudden became a big game. He's got 7 billion. His company is worth 60 billion. In a couple of years, he went from broke to creating a game. So we're talking about worlds that once you walk in it, and we have no particular goal, but just walking around in it, it's a very different place than the one we're inhabiting. It's coming from a different place. So then the guy said, one of the ways that you translate your painting into crypto is that you digitalize the painting.
Yeah, I
And the-
remember you talked about that last week.
And the digital becomes the reality.
Yeah.
Okay. And so and I say, well, hold it. You're thinking like them. So now we have Spiro here, where the digital becomes the reality. And then I find out that there's so many characters, and even Janet is jumping in, knowing what she's doing. Okay. And I just but I'm looking in my own Meshuggah way, from the philosophical framework. Is there an expression for us in that? If game playing is this, if that is this, okay. So I'm just trying to have a picture of what is happening. I did try to excite those who did have a sense of what was happening to be an entree into something, because I'd like to know if one, which we do anyway. I mean, can a human being navigate through this shit? You understand? And keep their humanity in the story. And I say, when you walk down the street in New York, you don't buy this, you don't buy bullshit, you're not this and that. So you are navigating your way through the shit in some way. And so we have tried to find a way to keep our humanity together while we're navigating through a world that's increasingly removed from us. So as you discover an artificialness as you step in, when you try to have a relationship to a genuine thread that runs through the life, and that you kind of only met it when you lost it in some way. That somehow you met the genuineness of your life by losing it in some fashion. In retrospect, you saw the thread that ran through it was the genuineness, not so much the literal survival. The survival was a medium towards certain experiences. That you hung around long enough to have a grandchild, good thing, you did good work.
Two.
2 grandchildren, you did good work. Who the hell?
I had nothing to do with it.
No, the weirdness of the scene. So let's say you had nothing to do with it. I just happened to be walking down the street in Texas, whistling, and then all of a sudden I'm swept off my feet.
No,
And you
that's
did
right.
pretty good for a swept off your feet existence, even though you tried to be practical, they wouldn't let you.
Danny, it's good to see you. I have to
Nice
go,
to
but
see you. Thanks for goofing around here,
stay
but I
well,
think.
stay safe. She's
Take care.
lovely, Kai, your girl. Bye.
She has a bellyache.
Oh,
Oh,
show the
I'll
picture.
take it away. I'm taking
Hold it,
away.
wait a second,
Yeah.
Catherine. Show the picture again.
Oh,
You
okay.
want to see Catherine's grandson? There.
What do you think?
He looks nice. huh?
Not bad looking, is he?
No, he's very handsome.
Take care,
Okay.
Catherine.
Bye,
Namaste. Bye. Bye, Urja.
Okay, let me go. Well, it couldn't be weirder and weirder. What do you say? Hi. How you doing? What do you think? He's supposed to be pretty good rapper and poet.
Mhm.
Hmm? Well, maybe we'll hear some of his stuff one day.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But then there's so many young people that may come on or whatever that who knows, just meeting each other and just accidental stuff like that. How are you doing, dear?
Danny's talking to you.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk?
No, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. No, not me. You're weird, Danny. Remember saying that when you didn't want to talk? Okay. You feeling okay, though? Okay. Nice to
She has a
see
belly. She has a bellyache.
you. And cold. Me too. I get that cold lately. Who had the bellyache here? Nobody? Everybody's okay? Any juice? Janet? Any bellyache juice? Question? No, we need to see it. Here's a grandma. We'll have a grandma talk to you for a moment. Carrot juice, you say? Cabbage juice.
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen. Not.
I don't like it either. I don't drink it. I thought she was going to say celery juice. Not celery juice. Tea? Which tea? Ginger tea.
Lotus won't take anything. We just do a little healing and meditation. That's about all.
I kind of like tea.
You kind of like tea? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember you
Chamomile
gave
tea.
me sips of your tea in the car?
Yeah.
No,
Chamomile.
that's why I'm saying Janet. Janet does natural. Pretty much dedicated to natural there. So then, it would be more fitting. But chamomile or whatever. So you're feeling that. Yeah. Okay. That you can just you're working with that where you can sense the body in such a way where the sense of it balances it out in some way. I mean, I do that. I'm exploring that. So, but I see that some of the fellows that you study with, they do have a sense that if you perceive it deeply enough, it restores a balance in the situation.
That's the only thing I've been able to do with her because she won't take any of my natural remedies, herbal. So I always just,
My least favorite is olive leaf.
yeah. I like olive leaf.
Olive leaf.
I don't know if olive leaf is really right for me because that one time the olive leaf actually made me throw up.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Mhm.
Yeah. I take turmeric and with pepper on top.
Best tasting throw up I ever had.
Yeah.
So then in the avocado, I sprinkle in the avocado, the turmeric, and then they say that something in the pepper activates the turmeric.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that.
So I've been doing that for a while, and
Really doesn't make a difference.
it doesn't speak to you, the turmeric. We'll try a couple of concoctions, see, but I've been using it daily, the turmeric.
For some reason,
Most
I
people are using it
have
here, right?
randomly burns down here.
Huh? Yeah, just turmeric and ginger. Just Not so much to make it go away, but just as a daily ingredient, that kind of restores the balance. What do you think? We can't sneak that past. I mean, she ain't gonna do it. Take some turmeric.
No.
Take some turmeric. No.
Tried everything.
Exactly. Do as you wish, but if you get a vibe, I've been trying the turmeric myself. See if you like that also.
I do
If you-
turmeric. I do turmeric in my smoothies.
Yeah, but I like the grinding of the pepper on it. On the
Mhm.
avocado or on the other foods that I eat that way. So
That
I have
sounds
an
good.
avocado a day. Every day I have an avocado or half an avocado, and I have it with turmeric and salad with that. So, see, but is it still hurting now? Yeah. Okay. Take it easy for a while. Let you-
It's not really hurting. It's kind of that feeling like when you're really hungry and your stomach starts to feel weird mixed with throw up feeling.
Yeah. So you want mommy to make some food? What about an avocado?
I have
Avocado? You don't do avocado?
I used to like them.
What do you say? You don't do avocado at all?
I do. We sometimes get concerned about her diet, but we just have to trust that she knows what she's doing because she eats fruit, bread, and pasta, and that's about it.
Yeah.
That's always bread. At least I eat fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit's healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, is it more vegetarian?
I feel like fruit is like the healthy version of candy. It is pretty
I
sweet.
would say it is, but it depends now on what, not mangoes. Are you eating mangoes?
It does have
She
like
just had a mango last night. We just
Oh,
cut a
really?
mango open last night.
Well, mangoes is intense. But they say also that when
fruit
we were
do
eating
have like
mangoes in
some
India,
sort of healthy
they were
sugar.
delicious. But then in Hawaii, if you picked the mango before it was ready, there was a white cream that came out of the branch. That was highly toxic if it touched your skin.
Oh, wow.
So there was also something in the mango that is related to not poison ivy. What's the other one? But one of those poison.
Poison oak?
No, it's a tropical.
Oh,
No
What they
poison.
say, but you have to make sure that the mango is really ripe. But sometimes there can be reaction to mango. Everything froze. Did it freeze on your thing there? Oh, I can see. I see. Can you hear Ursha? Yeah, the picture froze generally with Kai. Is Kai there still?
I'm back. I don't know why my internet keeps cutting out today, but luckily it's not cutting off the stream.
But man, maybe I'll start eating mangoes again myself. I haven't eaten for a while because I remember
No
the.
poison. No poison talk. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
No
No,
what?
no poison. Mm-mm.
No poison. You don't want to take poison?
Mm-mm.
Why? So, you don't eat eggs, right?
No, we're
You don't-
vegan, except honey. They eat honey.
Yeah, so I'm pretty close to.
vegan. We're 99% vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're 90%. How many percentage are you, Spiro? You go back and forth.
I have cheese and
99.
Yeah, so somehow we have, what was that cheese that I had this morning there? That feta cheese.
Please.
We had some
Cheese.
feta cheese because that's supposed to be the closest to the vegetarian cheese, and it's sheep. It has to be sheep cheese. And so for me, I also have created a diet. The main thing that I do is that I stop eating at 6 and I start eating at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I have an over 16-hour where it's not even fasting, it's just letting the body process the day and stuff like that, you know, so then we'll have ease in the nighttime or something. So I then have the span of eating for me. There is there are those guys, I think you can find them on YouTube or something called What to Eat When Diet, or When it's called, but What to Eat When, and they change things very much. Or for breakfast, they may say have the avocados and dinner or this or that, and have a light meal in the nighttime or something at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So there are lots of people trying things out there. So what you're doing is probably intuitive, but you have to be also concerned that she's free to eat everything that she can.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to force her to eat anything that she doesn't want
No.
to,
Well,
obviously.
but we also want to know that it's honest. So that's what I would say when we have here who got vaccinated, there's an honest friendship, an honest conversation around. So you like to know that she'll come to you if something's wrong and say, Mommy, it's not working, or this is happening, or whatever. So there's a need at times to have an honest conversation, not to be fixed on what you'll do or what you won't do. So then there's a trust mommy. If they say, Mommy, my mommy will do their best to try to shed some light on what's happening. Because I say the intuitive around the food, I feel is true, but at the same time, you're overseeing it so it doesn't get whacked out or trip out. Just like they're covering that rapper boy. You know what I mean? But make sure it doesn't turn into maniac, hurt kids and this or that, but that there's a health in it. So there is something that you're showing her where there's an intuitive way of living.
That's what I'm trying to let them do with their food, eat when they want. And
So the intuitive
they
doesn't
want.
have so many rules to it. It has more of it's coming from a different play. So I feel what she's doing is cool, but every now and then you may need to enter in the story and says, yo, baby, snap out of it. Okay.
We used to get like this dust egg stuff, which was like fake scrambled eggs,
Yeah.
fake scrambled egg mixture. But we stopped getting it because after a while it kind of made my stomach feel weird when I ate it.
I think it's made out of chickpeas.
I saw a lot of, we also have a lot of the stuff made like that, but then they say there's also a lot of stuff that you have to be concerned about in that scene where it's doing more damage in some cases. Just had an expose, but we do our own growing stuff, and we have friends and we grow our own, and most everyone is living on juices here. I only take 2 juices a day. But and that I think has a real maybe ginger in it and all these other things. Celery, ginger, apple.
Yeah.
That's very, So I think that the intuitive diet is what you've put together, but you also have to have conversations from now and then. What do you think?
Yep. I haven't had, we used to do that every once in a while, and I think we need to have another one of those. We haven't had one for a while.
So that's why I may have allowed, after years ago, when there was cancer in the story, then I started to have a diet that allowed me to be naive. In other words, I saw a picture years ago in the Whole Foods where they were helping the Eskimos out, and the Eskimos was getting this. So then I used that picture as a way of eating that food because it was natural there in the North Pole or where the hell it was in Alaska. But what I probably intuitively did was I probably needed B12. And so I probably found some dopey way so I was trying to find natural ways of integrating into the diet. So then to me, the diet was coming from nonviolence anyway, but it was coming from a creative space that you were putting together. What do you think? So then I would say that the diet had a basic vegan element to it of do no harm.
Yeah.
We didn't need to kill anything or hurt anything in order to, in our life, we were trying to minimize having to create hurt by our existence. So we were not part of the systems that we were in so much. That you made a buck no matter what, that somehow there was a human element in our life. And so it would have some sense of that. So you see vegetarianism, all these things are attempt to not only be a diet, but to come from the human. To keep a human where you're trying not to be violence is not normal in your life. So I feel in that, that itself becomes a healthiness.
Yep.
Okay, but that it literalizes and organizes itself into a way, I still feel that once one comes to that, then you're creating your diet as you live, as you go along. And so it has elements of this and that. And so vegan expresses a kind of nonviolence.
Yeah, that's the only reason we do it. It's all about
that
nonviolence.
contributes to the collective violence of greed and circumstance like that. So I feel that that's where probably much all of us are coming from. It was pretty funny, the conversation with Catherine, though, around something that was so intensely hurtful and deep and profound, and yet it was simple, and yet it's not so simple. It was profound. And how do you reach your grandchild? And
I had that with Tico, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months ago, where I felt this deep, just something that an energy that really scared me. And then I talked to him about it, and I found out that several of his friends were suicidal. And I mean, we worked through it, we cleared the energy and anything, but yeah, I guess that is kind of going around with teens right now.
there was in the New York Times, remember I showed you a few weeks ago where they revealed this group that was offering suicide, and many of them were young kids or teenagers in their 20s, and some of them did it together, made sort of romantic thing in it, and then they were giving ways, but they must have had a few thousand followers there on it. And
Wow.
they were suggesting how to do it, how to. But when they tracked the guys down, they denied it or whatever. One was in Ecuador and another was in Alabama or whatever, and they just had this. But from their perspective, they were performing a service where they were not preventing suicide, but they were creating it. So some of it had a kind of, but it is happening out there, and it seems like the kids are experiencing it. Did you experience that when you were around that time? Did you experience ever a time where you wanted to?
I was very suicidal, and yeah, in my teens.
Did you experience that, Erja, at a time in your life where you wanted to, or wish to die? No, Erja? Oh, your voice is not on. Okay.
Oh, you're muted, Urja, from when you were on the phone.
Voilà.
But
I
that-
thought about it, but
you thought about doing something, yeah,
yeah, how would I do it?
which is always too much for you. If you could just wish it. So let's say you have a relationship with a parallel life right alongside your own existence. And in fact, you are, from us, Arisha and myself, we are perceiving it actually in the room with you, where there can be a let it go and it can be a Cantonese. So you understand that there's some choices that's not literally a choice of the self, but somehow the life is living. And it's running into its own obstacles where you can see parts of the body surrendering. And it's not such a big deal. If I say to my knee, what's happening? It's, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to go out to that stupid mall again. Get out of here. Okay. So my knee leaves me. My knee is planning to leave me. It is planning to, and I notice now, for the last year, it's been planning to leave me. Okay. with the kind of pains that I've been. So let's say I find out in a joking way or in a horror show way that parts of the body are saying bye-bye or mañana or see you later or not into it any longer.
It's a long goodbye.
Well, you say before you say goodbye, knee, you want to have a conversation about it.
Oh, yes.
So then the knee says, what do you have in mind? And it says, I was thinking about buying a bike. Would you come back to the story if I bought a bike and we need you, the need?
Bicycle is nice.
So let's
It
say,
carries your weight.
can you, is it too dopey then? Let's say your employer is leaving you or your employer, just like your knee is leaving you. Can you say, look, I'll give you more pay and maybe a piece of the action or something in the store if you wish? Can you say to your knee, I'm sorry that we haven't given you too much attention. We'll look after you a little bit better now. Do you want to hang around a bit longer? And the knee says, I'll give it 5 months. With that conversation with your knee, I'll give you 5 months. And it's almost like a marriage. Then you say, look, I know it's not working between us or anything like that, and it's fallen away. But you think that we can have a conversation about where we are with it all and what's happening? And it says, I'll give you 5 months more. And then after that, okay.
Yeah.
So you have a conversation and they say, is it possible? It's not so much a conversation about convincing. It's more a conversation about, are you still into it? What's happening? What's the shift of it? So, holy Jesus, should I rehabilitate my knee? Or and my knee says, I don't want to be rehabilitated. I resist it. Okay. So let's say I find something that was absurd, but a fact that the body and the life has somewhat of a cooperative happening. And there's a cooperation, even if it's hidden from you. And it may be hidden from us because we would interfere with it in its naturalness. But there is a cooperation and a conversation going on in the life all the time that we discover in time. And we discover in time how heavily it's influenced our life, the conversation in the body. So you can see in your girl how what looks simple and you're going to convince her out of it or not, you see how deep it is. She ain't letting you in it.
Oh, I'm going through an intense one with that,
Okay,
with my
so,
daughter.
okay.
And
So you see,
I'm
she's
learning.
an intense time with her daughter in the same way. Is there no slouches? You say she's a kid, and I say, no, she's no slouch. You see, you come close to it, even if I kid it around, you know, just to get a look at what's happening. Take a picture of what's happening. That it's not so much a rebellion, but that it is kind of related to something that she's feeling. So let's say that over nothing. And yet you see the deep thing, how deep the dimensions are, how it'll be reached in memory. I remember as a kid where I decided to not eat beets just because you peed red. It was so a drag to pee red like that all the time. And then you thought it was normal.
It's scary. It's
But as a
scary.
kid, I was a drag, you know, so something in me ended with beets. No, I kind of liked them. I didn't like them any longer in that, you know. And so there must be 100 things like that as kids where that becomes a reality. And I can't say it's foolish. You may into it.
She won't touch one vegetable. Like literally all she eats is fruit, bread, and pasta.
Yeah, the pasta may save it though.
I keep reminding myself that there are kids that are breatharians and they're fine. So she probably knows what she's doing.
But in the juicing world, where you introduce juicing as part of it, then you can, there is no conflict between vegetables and fruit.
She won't. She used to drink smoothies. She won't anymore.
Won't drink the smoothie.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Are you okay? Or is it scary? Is it scary?
No, I'm more okay with it. When Rod starts getting worried, that's when I start getting a little bit like, do I need to do
So
something?
let's use Rod as the meter, because Rod is somewhat into that world and not into that world fully. You know what I mean? So the world that you inhabit, Rod's somewhat in that world, but he's not in that world literally. He's, he's also a citizen of Pennsylvania. Okay. And so he's trying to do, I would say, the right thing in a weird situation. But at the same time, he's still trying to be a citizen of the world,
Mhm.
literal, with a literal family and a literal circumstance. So, and what you have is a family that he deeply is attached to, but he can't live that lifestyle so much easily. You want the job.
Well, his family's gone now. So.
Yes, but you see the continuity is there to some degree, but he has the affection for this. So it's literally people will have a little struggle with it, but what's underlying it is not so dumb. You see feelings, loss, hurts, all of those things are underlying the story. Then you have the logical story. So you could see that he can be with it and not be with it at the same time.
Yeah, that's pretty much the truth. Yep.
And so then you're gonna have someone come in and say, "Hey, what are you crazy? Don't do that. Don't do this or do that." You can just say, "Get the hell out of here. Shut up." Okay. So you say that it can't be so easy to explain that. Look, I can't do that. This or that. It's not that I can't do that, but it's a different. If you have the feeling, you're not seeing it from the feeling. So basically, you're attempting to protect the feeling in the moves, which may be where someone who doesn't share the feeling seems like a dumb thing.
Yeah.
But somehow, it's not bad, even though, I mean, you would expect in any situation that you've had in your life that there would be that element of reflection in it, you know. So there is a true thing and a logical thing and a different world and a shift or whatever. But you've kind of let it known that the next phase for you, you want it to be a true thing now, that in its own way, creatively. And you see that Rod seems to have shared with you that life, but he's not in that scene himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be really clunky if you tried to get in and you don't know that you could make the adjustment now to literalize. But you still may. You may still have to walk out of the room and create a new expression with all the elements of the story in it, but no longer defined by the past. So you may have a bit of this in it, a bit in that, but it's no longer vegetarian. It's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's second nature to you now, and that second nature to you now is inherently nonviolent. Because it's inherently nonviolent, not because it's trying to be or it's studying to be or do it because the Buddha says it, but because it's second nature to its makeup. So it doesn't follow Buddhism. It has the Buddha's eye. It's not an ism, but you see that you're attempting to live a life that way, and the others who are sharing with you have some dimension. It may make it tough for them to even, because it's not based on a belief system so strongly with rules that way. It's based on energies.
Yeah.
And but as we all share here, it becomes more integrated into a circumstance where you see that it doesn't have rules in it, but it has something that is there in the art of it. That somehow everyone making the music together, or somehow everyone making a movie together, at a certain point there's an agreement. And all of us, you understand where they're singing together and they feel one voice and one thing. Somehow in aspects of the community, there's a shared experience. Even though it's an individual experience, there's a shared experience of it that intuits each other's lives in some way. So one is free to do this because they're not tripping, they're not scheming, they're not doing this. There's a real give this a shot or give that a shot or we'll try, but there's a looking out for each other. Your presence is just like a Catherine with the grandchild. There's a looking out for the grandchild through the family, because the family won't, won't let them. But somehow there's a whisper in the ear of a grandchild, hey baby, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Something that the literal family may not allow. So Catherine has a presence that will be there in memory, but also may have a broken heart over seeing that you can't just even spend a week easily or a day. Or
Right.
let's say that you knew that generally that he is and he isn't. And so part of that was we were kidding around, and I think that Spiro brought up the question of an Europa, and I said, no, the incident of breaking the moment is like your marriage, or you read something and you see that the person is cheating maybe, and then something instantly happens in the marriage. And that's not the literal. Now, the literalness may carry on for years or whatever, but you see there's a break. Once that break takes place, then the next phase of that situation is that you can't honestly, the things that you were doing when you were in love, you can't honestly do in the same way any longer if you're not in love.
Yeah.
And so therefore you're being nice to the circumstance, but it can't make love with you in that way because it has to be in love to make love in some way. So you see the next phase of the relationship, if there's to be, that there's a hey baby moment waiting in the story. That was around the feeling, but the feeling was lost to the story. So you explained to me that, or I feel that also it locates 25 years later or 20 years later a moment, or I mentioned where my daughter dies and all of a sudden it brings up some 20 years ago and 30 years ago friendships that were still carrying on,
Mm-hmm.
existing. But there's a hey baby moment where it comes together in a way where we say how absurd we were. We couldn't say anything to each other all those years, and they say, no, it had to be true. So you find out that to the moment where it had to come from a genuine space, and it reached a genuine space. And so for that moment, you see the thread that ran through the story is different than the literalness of the story. You see it is in fact a spiritual act, a creative act, hidden in a logical, literal act. When you get a chance to see the life, it's because the doer can't do anything about it. It's not needing a corrective or this or that. It sees the life lived. And it sees the life lived from the front seat of the movie, where you're not allowed to change the movie to fit your circumstance. You're touched by the movie. One sees their life in a way that it has to be innocent enough to be touched by it. Hmm? And the touching is not different than seeing a movie and you see the story and you see that something deeply happens and it reaches you in a way. There is dimensions of the story where, just like in the film, you may find a horror moment. There are moments of horror. There are moments of experience waiting where you say, holy shit, it was so obvious to move 50 years later. You see what happens, okay. But it had to play out. And so somehow you get a view where you are not the owner of the story. You see that you are caring for an experience. And the deeper you have a sense of that experience, the more it leaves the pack of survival being the only intention of life. You see that there's more desire to experience life as it is, not a fear of it so much. I feel that somehow you've explored your own expression in that way and passed it on. And you're in a situation that does resemble what you've been doing, where you're conveying a way to live, a feeling coming from a different place. And at the same time, there's a literal circumstance around it. But for a moment in your wildest dreams that you would be in such a circumstance, just like Catherine, that she would then have an Indian poet, 14-year-old, whatever rapper, where the sun won't, and yet it's probably given her a reason to hang out in a deep way. And at the same time, it's a weird challenge. This seems to be giving you a reason to hang out.
Yeah.
But I feel that the next phase of your expression will be coming from a creative place, in other words, coming from that this has allowed you to survive. The circumstance you're in has allowed you to navigate through the systems that you've been in.
Mhm.
And that there is a Shanti thread that runs through the story, no matter, even if you were in jail, there was a Shanti thread that ran through the story. Even if you were being tortured, there was a Shanti thread that ran through the story. And I feel it's respected and probably hurt by it. And, so there are many factors to it but somehow you've navigated through. And I say, if there had to be an examination of the very thing that was normal for you, that somehow there is a thread that runs through the story, and that there are folks in there trying to get a handle on what is this thread and what is the magic and what is the energy and how do you relate to it best. And you see that you developed a framework of friendships around a kind of lifestyle, around the feeling. And I don't know if it has to be by rules or not, but it's a relationship to the energy as it goes through the everyday story.
Yeah.
And so once it goes through the story, then the normal way of living is no longer defined that way. You're kind of, life is more experimental.
Yeah.
Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I am. I have to respect what my kids, and like with Tico, he has a couple cavities. He wants to try and heal them, just with thought and
No, but he's coming from a certain place. So Tico is
Mhm.
coming from a certain place. So when he says his friends, we're talking about vaccination. When he's saying, so he's talking about the outer world, when he's talking about Stanford, when he's talking about all of you having an experience together, somehow he's relating to this other world. And you also understand that there are movements around teeth, there are movements around that are unnatural, that somehow. So he's plugging into a world that to us is not so available, but there is where there's Musk talking about what to do and how to live and what you'd like, and it may give what the dreams. Then you see that there's suicide running through the adolescent story.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Through the story, and not, but is really part of it. And when I read that article in the New York Times, you saw how the kids were talking to each other, who were planning. It was like they were dating.
It was, and it becomes this romantic thing. And when I said to Tico, I don't, he basically said to his friends, I'm not allowed to hang out with anybody who wants to hurt themselves. I didn't say that, but and I think they all snapped out of it when he said that. But it becomes some sort of a romantic conversation that they have around suicide.
Yeah, no, it is that strongly, but it has always been, and in its own form or only way that. But the deeper you get into it, you then see, like when I'm kidding around with Urja, and I say, "Are you still into it?" And I say, "Okay, let's give it another year to play with," because you see, living and dying are in the story. It can be a horror movie, it can be a scary, it can be this, it can be hope. But in fact, there's none of this. It's actually in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing in or breathing out, it's actually happening. You're living and dying simultaneously. And if you, like she did the other day when it looked like she was passing away and then she decided to go into the bathtub, to me, she decided to live.
Mm.
So I'm feeling that those dopey decisions, that even, okay, that you are, that she was then passing away or not passing away. And I feel that she's decided then in our conversation then to go take a bath take a hot bath. And to me, those are decisions to carry on. Now, I
Yeah.
also may find all of a sudden my fingers, my hand is white, my leg is white, all like, what the hell
Yeah.
is happening? Okay. And and I say, what is happening? Since you're not using the feet so much, they're going. You're not using the hands so much, it's going. And so what is there? You want an explanation of what is there? It's called circulation. And if you walk to the mailbox, it may live 5 months longer if you do that. But if you don't remember, you haven't taken a walk for a long time, even though you've done other exercises, you haven't done, okay. So let's say your body talks to you. So let's say if your body says, if you haven't walked in 5 months, it started to think, okay, it's able to surrender the feet. He's not going to use the feet anymore. So the body says to you, it's an honest, look, man, why don't you admit you're not taking walks any longer? You're on the way out, bro. The body says to you. So you're making it like I did something to you. The feet did something to you. You're not using your feet anymore. Say, makes sense. It still goes to the conversation you're having with your own life. Exercise. It's a utilization. It's in other words that for us, it's not an exercise to do that. It's still being into the life somewhat, an activity. And in fact, when in fact I keep on saying, Manana, maybe tomorrow we'll go do that. It's not only putting it off, because I'm not in that world alone. The putting off means that one is surrendering certain aspects. There was a thing happening. And it in fact is dopey to us. So what you're talking about with the Shanti, where there are conversations with the body, I don't feel are so crazy. Where there's a conversation with the knee, and the knee says, okay, let's give it a shot. How dopey that is. But in fact, that's what happens.
Yeah,
You're
it's
not convincing it that there's an agreement somehow. There's a point in your body where it's no longer a natural thing happening literally, but there's an agreement, like there's a hey baby conversation, just like there's in the love affair when it's going wrong. Well, it looks like wrong, but it may be going right, that it's breaking up unless there's an honest conversation somewhere. Where breaking up is not wrong. Breaking up is in fact when the love has fallen away is breaking up. The hurt foot is not a fault. It is an indication that something is happening. And that means that you haven't given an affectionate look or care or whatever. And so then you start to see that time and continuity are part of a creative happening for you. It's not only literal time of how long it is, but almost how deep it is for you. And so then you discover a world where you can feel for the body in a way where it agrees.
yes, and that's what I'm trusting with the kids. And when Tico says, I don't want to get my teeth drilled and filled, I want to heal them. And I can go with that until Rod decides that I'm absolutely crazy.
Both are there. Both are there because you see, because I'll also have that challenge. Should I say, okay, should I go to the doctor? So I go only when I need to find out something for myself, so that my intuition is kind of confirmed by the science.
Mhm.
Okay. But at the same time, when you go into, so then you're measuring to what extent you see if they throw penicillin into the story, how it throws off the system for a week. So you're seeing the laboratory of your body. And you make a measure. Should I take, okay. But at the same time, you're in it, but not of it. You can utilize the medicine world, but you're not defined by it. So there are times when there may be a moment. So you see that your kids are then also finding a way. But yeah, you are crazy though. They're going to see you as crazy, you know. Okay, is that okay? No, there are going to be times when you're sticking to your feeling and that it's going to be crazy in the little world. Kai, are you frozen there? Yeah, you seem to have frozen again. You're okay, Urja?
Yes, Danny, thank you.
Okay. Is Kai frozen for you also?
Yes.
Oh,
Um,
just moved. You just moved.
it's I guess it's my internet. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, did you hear all that?
I heard you came in and said, yes, they probably will see you as crazy, and then it stopped again. That's all I heard.
Well, no, because both things are there. Let's say it's crazy and not crazy simultaneously. So it's not exactly crazy. Well, let's say, let's have more of a faith in the energy or in the system or in the feeling and not look to get shots and cure it and define it. So they say, okay, they can go along with it because there is a healthy feeling to that. But then in the literal world, that is crazy now because they want you to act on literal realities. And you're concerned about, since you've had experiences in the past with medicine, where there is an effect that carries on and affects your body. And that's what they're neglecting to mention, the long-term effects. And what they are seeming to have now is booster, 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 booster. It's no longer booster, but booster, booster. And now it seems booster, 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 booster. And so they say, hold it now. I ain't taking no boosters. No. Then I'm in the booster world. So then you say, okay, I may have a relative sense of it because for me, I'm hanging for a year creatively, and I'm seeing I'm having an agreement with my body, whether it can absorb it and move with it in a way. And so it says, okay, it gives me okay. So in that, um, everyone creatively has to relate to it in a kind of integrity in the form. It's not do or don't do in the world. For me and us creatively, it is keeping our freedom, keeping our creative sense of, well, let's say that you are carrying the soul of the life with you. And you become aware that that dimension exists, and yet it doesn't exist in the same way in the world. It makes a business of it, or it makes a, so you see that there's a genuineness in your life that you're preserving and caring for. And so you see that for you, the way it's presented to you, it's not genuine. It's forcing you to think about saving your life to such an extent that you have to put aside certain considerations that are very important to you. So you can't honestly join the story. And those who have joined the story then yell at you as being crazy bastards or this or that. And then those who won't join the story make a conspiracy of it. You're not in a conspiracy and you're not a non-conspiracy and you're not joining this army and that army, this belief system. You're keeping a purity in some sense, in some creative sense in yourself. You're keeping that together. And you're keeping that together as the basis of the relationships. So then you're carrying on a situation of how to keep a kind of grace in a world that doesn't even include grace in its figuring. It's how to make a buck, how to survive, how to do this. Okay. So how to navigate with the grace is having a private conversation. And you see then it will then be confronted by the duality of survival. Okay. So then it's not so much around, you see that the grace that you've conveyed is inherently in the memory story. It's not so much the literal survival. The literal survival will give you formulas for survival, that you have to do this, you have to go to war, you have to do this, you have to fight for it, you have to work for it. But in the premise of living, that's all a choice. Work is a choice. Marriage, those are a choice that comes out of the grace of something, not so much out of fear. So when fear is not the dominating influence, and yet fear is the dominating influence in the society you're in,
Yeah.
then you're going to see that much of what you're saying, even though they may wish for it, is too naive.
Yeah, I know.
But in fact, naive is a whole other dimension that we're living in that has an attraction to it. Okay. but has a fear because it doesn't spell out the life. It's also asking you to come from a place. And that and somehow that place resembles almost a creative life, where it's asking you to go into the movie as you take on the character that you come from a place. And you can see creatively that you need to come from a place to honestly take on the character. You find that the art is reflecting of your life, that there's somehow an integrity in assuming the role. And so then you're in the challenge of assuming the role, we'll say, of mother in a world where you're kind of introducing a grace between you, but you also understand that that's stupid around survival.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You've remarkably been able to carry it off, especially in this time when the theater has been around dying and COVID and this and that, and not knowing what to do. And that you've carried on this period of time seems to me that was pretty remarkable, what we've shared with you, that you've kept it together. If you're still into it, the kids seem to be growing up in their way or having their own expressions. So the story seems to be releasing you to some extent by not being needy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the kids seem to be approaching adult conversations with you about life, where they are, what the feeling should be, and and you're kind of conveying them that they come from, if they come from a feeling into the story. So you see that they have creative urges in them.
Oh, yes.
But you also see that they are reflecting back to you what is happening with sensitive kids out there now.
Yes.
And the unreality of existence and what seems and the computerization of the existence, losing some feelings or some experiences. So a lot a remarkable thing is happening. We get a chance to have our broken heart, to see it from a helpless space. But helpless doesn't mean non-creative. The thought of you, the memory of you, the nearness of you is an act. It doesn't have to be literal anymore. There's not so much a literal thing for you to go do, but there are conversations that may come your way from seeing, from perspective, from kidding around just now with the kids before, what they'll eat, what they won't eat, and we'll put on a face and we'll talk about beets and celery. But basically, you see that you're there's a creative space in there where there's dopey conversation, but it's not exactly dopey. That she has a choice available to her where she's free, but not free to be crazy, not free to be hurtful, not free to do hurt to one's body. But you're free to experiment. Mommy's here. We're looking out for you. There is that thing. The space is free and clear. But when I start to get fearful of it, it's fearful because it's starting to shift where it can't go into neurosis. It can't be captured by the psyche that it has to self-inflict or no trip. You're conveying to the kids that you've got a very privileged, very civilized situation in front of you. And that most of the world has to work or do this or survive. Somehow they have the freedom to explore. So they have a way of coming into the world from a more humane place, a human space, which is not so dominated by attitude of survival.
Right.
So for most of us, it will be hard to have attitude. Like, yeah, I'm a fuck book, so that brings into the story. So sometimes we can assume attitude if we need it, but we don't want to be stuck in an attitude.
Right.
In circumstance, you see yourself surrounded by attitude. But then when you meet it personally or whatever, you start to see hurt people out there. In fact, they said that movie, that new, The Power of the Dog, is it?
Power of the dog.
The Power of the Dog, yeah. They said you had to see it 3 times.
I swear. I saw
It was Cam.
My daughter saw it right away.
Yeah, but then we said the first time we didn't like it so much. It was, but then after 2 or 3 settings, it was pretty brilliant. You saw that
It
the
is.
person who was such a man, but Campion does that in her writings, where she was such a rat man, strong bastard. But then she also revealed that he was a Yale graduate and he was this and he wasn't really. And so then they said, please see the movie again and again
Mhm.
and again. And then you start to see a whole other dimension of a guy who has a hidden life and a secret life. And okay. So there were other dimensions. So then we saw the acting was pretty good. So we saw it a few times. Mhm. You saw it also, Urja. One time
Yes.
only?
Yes, but
Right, the
my
whole premise of the revelation of the secret life, that you've been able to carry it off. And at the same time, you could have gotten out of it at earlier dates or this or that. You could have shifted the plane, but you couldn't walk away from something creatively. And it looked like a fault, but it's not such a fault. Creatively, I'm looking at what you've put together and I feel, holy shit, I don't know how you pulled it off. You understand? So I see purely a creative act. And I see that you've kept in touch with certain feelings in a situation for you to be with it. And to some degree, you've gotten respect for it from those around you. And at the same time, you've gotten resistance to it. So both things are there. But it's only because you're into it. When you cease being into it as being relevant any longer, then it will. So there is a real being there for the kids that is not spelled out, but shifts from the literal real life where they may not even be able to hear what you're saying any longer, but they'll remember you. So they may have a conversation with friends where you are remembered in the story. Something that they say all of a sudden creates a memory where you see that you are not only you, but there's a feeling that runs through the story that is you also, that is in their life share.
Yeah.
And that feeling will protect them from going too far. In other words, she'll still try to be healthy in what she's eating. There's something in the relationship that won't let her poison herself or go too far or over dramatize in that sense. So they're real people in their own right.
Now, she does have a concept of being healthy, and she also has just such a strong feel for animals. So, yeah, she's doing her
Yeah.
thing.
No,
Trying to
you've done
shift
good work. You're free to retire anytime.
it.
Basically, if you're present in the circumstance now, it's because you still want to see something happening. And so you're doing some work. And I guess you're able to take the measure of who's into it and who's not into it around you. So
Yeah.
somehow, you're still into it?
Yes, and things are shifting. The situation I told you about on Sunday seems to be shifting in a good direction. We'll see.
It's shifting.
Yeah,
Sometimes sometimes it'll be cheesy moments. Sometimes it'll be, have all, but the underpinning is you wish at one point for it to be free.
that's all I want.
And not free because you have to kill someone or hurt someone or do someone, but freedom is, okay, baby, you're free. So somehow there's a blessing for the next stage of the situation where you don't have to carry a past weight or a trip or, okay. So the next phase is coming from a time that is not historical, but is coming where the people will meet each other from a more human space, not so much the historical drama. So I feel that you are putting that in motion. And you're free to go or come or go. It doesn't need so much a literal space or whatever. It more is an intuition or a feeling. And even an agreement, you're pretty close to an honest conversation. Now, you say that last week it can be another trip coming into the story, but
That
basically,
seems to be opening though, so we'll see where that goes.
right, no, it is that everyone is free to be there or free to go, no trip. So the family is not literalized as the family is a feeling shared. And if people are to come into your little family and assume a role, they must understand there's an existing situation that's already there.
Right.
And that existing situation, as it's dissolving, has a kind of respect for a process that took place.
Right.
You brought a human sense to a weird scene. You brought a creative, spiritual sense to a scene that would have been pretty weird if it was just locked into its community.
Yes.
And so, no matter what they say, somehow you made them reflect, however much they got pissed off with, you made them reflect on what they were about and what they were doing. And I say, why? Because when, in fact, you've assumed the spiritual life as your life, there's a challenge of integrity that comes into your life. And integrity is not only that you have a duality going, but integrity is that you, so I feel that you brought integrity in your own weird way to a situation that was very challenging and they were going to kick your ass. And they couldn't because there's some remarkable kids that came out of it. And you knew that the kids would not allow them to hurt you. And everyone knew that the kids would not allow you to be killed. They may do it, yell at you themselves, but they won't allow anyone to yell at you. So let's say, holy shit, I'm watching a play that's remarkable, but the people in it are seriously in it. But in relationship to us, then the play aspect is discovered that there's a creative dimension that runs through it. And in that creative dimension, somehow you're free to be yourself. Even though they don't agree with you, even though they're fighting with you, even though they think it's this and they think it's that, somehow you still were free and there was a looking out for each other. When that starts to shift and it becomes competitive, and then you start to see forces in the story. But as it is now, you'd like the other women coming in, they don't have to be cheesy with you, man. They don't really have to be cheesy. Okay. It just has to be, somehow, it must be perceptively healthy or a good thing.
Yes.
No trip.
Yes.
You are not holding on to any literal story. You're not holding on to anything, but you're not letting them kick the shit out of you either around something. There's
Yes.
a recognition at this phase, if it's at all possible. So you're exploring new ways of doing something where it's not contradictory. They're free to explore their relationship or whatever, but it doesn't have to kill everything in order to do this. In fact, it dumbs it down. Even though they're going to try it, there is a conversation that says, hey, baby, you don't need to pull this shit. The thing is that we must be simply, we're all free to go, but not out of attitude. We're free to go because we're free to go. The recognition of that. You're caring for something. It's worth a shot, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you see, when it literalizes, when it becomes the avoidance of an honest conversation, so deeply that it becomes violent around attitude.
Yes.
Where the attitude crystallizes and you see how much is just hiding a normal conversation.
Yes.
That say, hey, baby, if you're planning to integrate my kids into your life with your kids and do this and do that, you have to kill me. And I say, they ain't going to do it. Okay.
Exactly.
And they say the move, but we understand where you make a fait accompli. And I say you can make the fait accompli, but not as a scheme. It has to be that the kids really like each other with this and create their own reality or whatever. So
Mhm.
let's say people are confronted with something true at this point in time. If the kids connect, if the story connects, that's fine with me, but not as a trip. Hmm? There's a thing that's happening, and you still like it to be a creative conversation where you're free.
Yes.
Hmm? So I feel that you're in the remarkable aspect of it, but it's the everyday stuff. But most of us are now being challenged with a creative life, and it's in the normal life. It looks like a normal life, but it's a remarkable situation. You're okay?
Yes.
And Catherine said she was okay, even though she's trying to connect and this and that. So you see the challenge in a situation where the history and the mystery both coexist, where some elements of the relationship are shifting to mystery. Hmm? Okay, Kai, take care. Again, we're here, just evocatively, creatively, just to get it's hard to see. But you're okay with it?
Yes, I am okay with it. I pretty much just I pretty much said there has to be a conversation or I'm not going to be involved. So she seems to be coming around. So we'll see what happens. She's doing some deep diving. So
Yeah, no, it's you may be surprised what the real relationship is.
mhm.
And it may be a way of meeting you, and they found a way to meet you on a deep level in this way. Where you start to see that similar threads that run through her, run through you also,
Mhm.
and so you may see if it comes close to that, where it's not reactive but reflective, you may see dimensions in the story that connect.
Yeah.
Then you may be able to agree, possibly between the people, that they can just see what's good.
Yeah.
What an impossible thing where it can simply come to that. What's the best? What's right for us creative spiritually?
Yes.
And they say, oh, look out, you could take the car, you can.
Mm.
Stupid, innocent conversation is waiting that takes years to get to
Years.
because it's resistance. So its level of resistance is important to the experience.
Mm.
Hmm? So that's why I was kidding around when I mentioned the rope. I don't want him to hear this without hearing the full story. It's that when some shift takes place, I can't access the energy any longer in the relationship.
Yes.
It's like a break in the marriage or something like that. You can't really make love honestly any longer because somehow it's missing a hey baby conversation or something like that. So you say the next phase of our relationship is no trip where my survival is more important than the creative grace.
Mhm.
You see that we have all been given a creative life. We think it's been a literal life. And we've had girlfriends and boyfriends and loves and houses and lost this, but we haven't had the job of slavery or anything like that. We've had a free life to some degree and a creative life. And there are moments when there's a deep integrity, not so much the survival of the self, but the integrity of the story that you're in. So
Yeah.
I felt that we all met what seemed like a normal story. Everyone had a magical story that seemed normal. But then they were saying, okay, it's normal that your father teaches Shakti, right? Okay, and that's normal. And I say, what kind? I don't. When I'm looking for a job, I say, one who teaches Shakti, I say, no, there's only factory jobs available to me. So let's say some incident, some sugar happening created a life. And out of that life, families came and situations came that accepted that life as being normal.
Yeah,
So
boy.
most of the world doesn't do Shakti when they wake up.
Naropa's so far from normal in that way.
Okay. So when that life becomes normal for you, it's normal for me. Those lives are normal as a regular, literal life, because there's a hidden thread that still runs through the story. And meaning what? That there were people, whatever shape it took, they were people. And the yearning that happens in people in the story, no matter what it is. And I feel that the relationship is to that yearning. And that the yearning may take different forms in the world, but I think that there's a point where the yearning. Let you go. Do you have to go? Kai, are you okay?
Yeah, she's hungry, but
Oh.
can you get something?
No, I'll also get going myself.
Okay.
Okay, I'll show you some of the drawings next week.
Can I say mine?
Are you still doing drawing?
Danny asked you if you're still doing drawing. She did a cool thing. We like the movie Cars, which is an animated movie, but all the characters are
Yeah.
cars. So she decided she was going to draw each car character as a human, what they would look like as human.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool, and she drew them pretty cool.
Okay. I'll see you guys maybe next
Thanks,
week.
Danny.
Thank you,
Take care,
Danny.
everybody.
Bye.
If anything comes up, give a call anytime, everyone. But other than that,
Tomorrow, you have Thursdays on?
oh, I'll see you tomorrow, Ursha. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Uh-oh.
Oh.
Have some celery. No.
She ran away.
You know, our little puppy does the same thing. When he hears a note on the television, he runs away and hides. Every time that note comes on.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
What was it? PBS. Something comes on PBS. Darlene, Charlie. It's one specific sound.
Oh, wow.
Go into the pantry, it won't come out.
Wow. That's interesting.
Okay, everyone. Namaste. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye. White fingers were that. Man, those are really white
Wait, what
fingers. Those are cold. That's a cold hand.